bodies. So like imagine a stereo system, the master control. When we're trying to turn down all the pain instead of facing it, we're also turning down the levels of joy, of love, of pleasure, of bliss we can receive or experience, because we're numbing ourselves out. We're just disassociating and disconnecting.
Yeah, I think that's where, a lot of the alcohol, the drugs, a lot of that stuff is just, people are just stressed. Welcome to another episode coming at you from ChooseYourRelationships.com, author of Love Can't Wait, which can be found on Amazon.com. So today, if you're into having better sex, even if you're a man or a woman, if you have ED problems, my special guest today can help you out with this. If you want to have better sex, want better sex, or want to educate yourself on what it takes to have good sex, this is the episode for you today. I have another special guest. She's on a mission to help men and women live life fully from a place of magic, love, and abundance. She's a registered nurse, trauma-informed master tantra coach. She's a healer, and she's a coach, certified educator, and she's actually still a nurse, still to this day. My special guest today is Dominique DeVita. Welcome to the show. So, where you from?
I'm from Texas, and I went as a travel nurse for 12 years in California, and then I returned to Austin, Texas, almost 3 years ago. So back in my home state.
Oh, okay. That's nice. I'm going to be visiting there soon, Dallas.
Yeah, that's I lived there for a little bit when I was a child. So it can snow and stuff there. It snows a little bit here, but it gets colder in Dallas. So
yeah.
And Austin is like the California of Texas. So it's kind of the best of both worlds here.
Okay. So how did you get started as a healer, master coach, tantra coach? How did you get started? Because that's a very taboo subject. People don't like to talk about it. So I know this is not something that, hey, I doubt that you said, hey, when I grow up, this is what I want to do.
I don't know though. I mean, I think I was on my path even when I was younger, because I always had a curiosity about sex and sexual topics. And I'm a Scorpio. I was born on Halloween. So I remember at age 7 and 8 looking at my mom's Cosmopolitan magazine and reading like the sex tips section is wild. I can remember praying when I was young, like, please don't let me die a virgin. I somehow knew sex was going to be really important to me. It's so funny when I look back at that. Like, how did I even know that I wanted to? And I had sex later than my peers, but I always had a fascination with it. And then when I was 15, I would watch Dr. Ruth on TV. So always have been interested in the topic and very curious about it. But when I was in my 40s, I went to Barnes & Noble and I found a book about tantric sex, and I didn't open it. If I would have opened it, I would have seen that it starts as a solo practice, that you don't need a lover to begin. But just a common misconception is, oh, I need a partner. So I put the book on my shelf at home, and then a few years later, I was like, oh, when the right person arrives, that I feel is up for this, I'll share. I can explore this. And then years later, I went as a travel nurse and packed me and my girls in a little Toyota coupe to LA. You can imagine trying to get 3 women's things in a little car. And then that book made its way to LA with me, again, back on my shelf. And then when I was in LA a few years later, a man who's from Texas that was living in LA, we met and we went on some dates, and he shared with me, well, he didn't share with me that he had this skill set.
Okay.
And he had studied tantra, and he learned something that I now teach my clients, how to separate his orgasm from his ejaculation, so he could be multi-orgasmic and have sex for hours and not be drained afterwards.
Yeah.
And then he had dated a tantra coach, so he had this high level of self-mastery with this and peak performance. I did not know, and we weren't on any substances or anything. And almost a decade ago, March the 1st, was when I had my first, what I call soulgasm with him. And I had what they call like a Kundalini awakening, like my third eye and my crown chakra open, and it radically shifted my life. And so I was, at the time, I was a recurring guest on Playboy Radio sharing about sex tips already. And I already thought I knew everything there was to know about sex, and I was having better sex than 90% of my friends. They're like, you should write a book. And then I realized, wow, there's so much more here that I haven't even tapped into. Like, I've barely been scratching the surface of what's really possible for me to experience. And that put me down this rabbit hole of like, what else can I do that I never knew? And then just real quick, going back, once when I was getting another specialized training, because I can take the role of an assisting surgeon. So if a surgery requires 2 surgeons, I could take that, and I would help with open hearts, brain surgeries, all kinds of stuff. When I was doing that training one time, my daughter, she saw me watching Talk Sex with Sue Johnson. At the time, she's going to be 36, but she was like 13. And she saw me watching it, and she says, oh my goodness, Mom, someday that's going to be you. You're going to be on TV talking about sex. It's just, I've always been the person to educate my friends and the people around me. So it's a hot topic for me. I'm very passionate about it. And why do we have so much shame about it? Like, no one wants to talk about it. But if it wasn't for sex, none of us would be here. It's the whole reason we're here.
I don't know. It's just a weird thing. You know, people want to have good sex, but they don't want to talk about it. And a lot of it has to do with religion.
For sure. Most definitely.
There's a lot of shame and guilt. And then a lot of times, if people have been shamed and suppressed how they felt for such a long time, and it only takes, could be one person or one incident that set them off, and then they'll go too far.
Yeah. We have to have a balance, because it's such a power. It can be our sexual energy is our life force energy, and we can create not just a human life with it, but focus it on creating the life that we want to have. So it's very powerful, and we misuse that power a lot, or we use it to manipulate other people or control other people or to get validation. I used to do that in the past too. And now that I know the power, I'm less promiscuous than I was, because I understood energy. And I was like, wow, I can't put a body condom on myself and protect myself from someone's bad vibes, or if they haven't been working on their dramas and their traumas. Like, I don't want to have someone in my most intimate spaces that hasn't been doing their work or is not self-aware. Yeah, or just coming at me for ego or to drain my energy. So, but one thing with this mastery, especially when men learn how to separate their orgasm from their ejaculation, it increases their magnetism and their confidence.
Oh yeah.
And my clients are like, wow, like women are just approaching me. Like, this is the weirdest thing. And women can start to feel that you're more of a safe space, because that helps them to relax. But whenever you're not draining and leaking that energy, you're just radiating. It charges up your aura, your vibe around you. Because we all know, even if we don't say we understand chakras or energy, we know that sometimes when someone walks in a room, the energy can be felt. Like, it can shift the way of a room. And we all have the power to be able to do that. But we've been taught for so long through religion, like dimming our light, being seen, not heard, or not using our voices, and just laying low and not to make any waves. Yeah.
But it's hard to, I know it was hard for me when I was in my 20s. It's hard to go against the grain, because you have, majority of people are, they kind of going along to get along or whatever. And if people start to see you as, oh, you're different, they're going to be like, hey, who do you think you are? And, that's when the shame and then all that stuff comes along. So a lot of times, even if people know what you know, or I know, it's kind of like, how do I, it's so hard for them to go, because people care about what their friends and their family think more so than what they think. So
yeah. It's really sad, and a lot of times as I worked as a nurse in critical care, I would take care of people in their last moments, or when I worked in oncology and with cancer patients, and they would share with me their regrets, and I would give them a lot of compassion and empathy and try to make them as comfortable as I could in that process. But at the same time, it was so frustrating because there's nothing I could do to have helped them have a different experience in their lifetime. And then the people that they were so worried about, what does this person think? Those people aren't at their bedside when they're taking their last breaths. Those people have already forgotten about them. And they sat here and played small and didn't fully live their lives passionately, fully, without shame, and really have the experience that they desired to experience. And then they just die with, take their last breath with so much regret. So I also would help with open heart surgeries, and tantra is what helped open my heart. And then I thought, sex is something where I can meet people at an earlier point in their timeline, in their life path, and help them. And you think about like a Marvin Gaye sexual healing, right? And help them let go of the shame and the things so they can be limitless, so they can live a life that their heart desires. And also I work with the body, and it's a 360 approach holistically, because our body's the instrument to experience pleasure, and pleasure is medicine. And a lot of times we have trapped or stuck emotions like shame, guilt, fear that are actually leading to dis-ease in our bodies. So if I can guide people into healing those past wounds, to letting go of those emotions that are stuck and trapped and creating disease, maybe, they won't have to be hospitalized towards the end of their days. And when they do take their last breath, they won't have regret. So that's the reason I was like, what? I don't want to just be here for people when it's too late. I want to see how I can maybe create a change before it gets that far. So those are the things I've helped my clients. One of my clients has chronic atrial fibrillation, and with my guidance, I was even telling him his specialty functional cardiologist that he traveled to another country to see, that's very educated. I said, those medications, when did you start taking that? Because one of the side effects is AFib. Or can they change up your medications? Let's balance your gut microbiome. And it's been amazing. He's like, my health, like everything. He's like, I don't have that heart issue anymore. Regulate his nervous system. His wife, having more intimacy than they've had in decades, just because he said, I didn't know my anxiety and my fear, my stress levels from work were pushing her away, because it's a repelling energy.
Yeah. I had a doctor tell me a long time ago. He said, look, your job in life is stay out of that hospital unless you're bleeding to death or you got a broken bone or something like that. But he said, look, your job is to stay out of that hospital, because if you go in there, you don't know if you're going to make it out.
Yeah. And unfortunately, even more so with you being Afro-amazing, right? With being minorities, there's so many women that if they're, people of color, people of culture, I say, that they don't get even if they have PhD degrees. Even Serena Williams, when she was in the hospital, they were not listening to her when she was having symptoms of a blood clot. She had a blood clot before, and they weren't getting her the help that she needed. And so unfortunately, it was a real hard pill for me to swallow, because I was never treating my patients differently based on their ethnicity. And to realize that some people were and not getting the best care just breaks my heart. So especially for you, it's best for you not to go, because sometimes people will dismiss you or not really listen to what you're saying you need. And that's really sad. And we have more of our hospital industry and pharma and the big pharma, it's a sick care system. It's not a healthcare system.
No. Yeah, basically,
Yeah.
So how'd you know? Well, first of all, how'd you make the transition from a nurse to teaching and training?
Yeah, well, when I had my first experience, then I started studying Tantra and learning more about it. And then I learned from, I had my first teacher, and she's no longer with us anymore, but I had my first teacher, and I trained with her for about 6 months. She learned from her guru in India. Okay. And then I went on she didn't really want me to work with men though, because she said, men are going to try to be intimate with you, and I don't want my name on, XYZ. I was like, I know how to hold my boundaries. That's one thing. It's very unprofessional. We're not intimate with our clients. But people get a misconception of that because you see sometimes in certain listings like tantra massage when it's it's really an escort that probably doesn't even know how to do tantra massage, but it's a gimmick thing to just make a sale, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of tarnished what the word tantra really means. Yeah. And so I was like, I can hold my boundaries. But then the beautiful thing was I learned from two other educators. One of them, she learned from Margot Anand, who learned from Osho, who brought Tantra here to the West. And he's amazing. And so I learned from them. I spent a couple of years learning and became a certified Tantra educator. And then I started just doing it part-time while working part-time. And then one of my coaches and my business coaches is Preston Smiles. And he showed me how to really have a successful business with my coaching, and that really took off. And then recently, because there's so much trauma around sex and sexuality and in our bodies, in our lives, I spent last year in a very rigorous 9-month program becoming a trauma-informed master coach at Elementum Coaching. And so there's just so much more. One thing that I learned that really fascinated me when I was learning about trauma release is in studying trauma, the 3 things that support healing trauma are breath, sound, and movement. Well, the 3 tenets of Tantra for over 5,000 years is breath, sound, and movement. So literally a lot of these practices offer you a lot of healing and are really supportive to our nervous systems and help us to release traumas. And that way we can have deeper intimacy, because we have to see what those blocks are, what our fears are. And when we feel safe in our bodies and with ourselves, and we love ourselves a lot and become our own best lovers, we become better lovers. And we interact with people in a different way. So it's really interesting, like, oh, this is why this was so supportive of me healing from my childhood things, because it does support healing trauma.
Yeah, man, a lot of people never heal from what happened to them in the past.
Yeah. And, one of the things that I learned in my program at Elementum Coaching was that over 95% of adults received inadequate parenting. And it's because our parents received inadequate parenting. And so it just keeps these traumas just keep being passed down generation after generation. And then we numb out through sex, drugs, other vices, porn addiction. I support men overcoming porn addiction as well. But all these other vices that we have to disconnect, or, food addictions, whatever. So we're disconnecting and we're numbing ourselves, and because we don't want to feel that pain. But when we block feeling pain, we're also numbing ourselves to feeling pleasure as well. It's like we have this master volume control in our bodies. So like imagine the stereo system, the master control. When we're trying to turn down all the pain instead of facing it, we're also turning down the levels of joy, of love, of pleasure, of bliss we can receive or experience, because we're numbing ourselves out. We're just disassociating and disconnecting.
Yeah, I think that's where, a lot of the alcohol, the drugs, a lot of that stuff is just, people are just stressed, they're overworked, there's something else is really going on. You just never know what people are going through,
Yeah, you never do. So we just have to, I always try to remind myself, people are just doing the best they can with what the level of awareness that they have in this moment. They're just doing the best that they can. I just try to believe that.
Yeah. So what made you, how'd you meet a lot of the celebrities? How'd you?
I don't, there's a certain thing with my magnetism with Tantra. Like I've manifested some of the wildest experiences. It's really been amazing. I've manifested, celebrity clients, celebrity friendships, amazing job opportunities, amazing partners and lovers, because when you start to work with your aura and your energy, people just sense that about you. You can't put a filter on your energy. And so we get taught in this consumerism society of like, I need to put all these things and I need to do all these things to look a certain way, to have the outer beauty, to have the status symbols. Yeah. But if we're suffering on the inside, there's nothing that can cover that up. We're just going to end up, it's a inside out game. Our our outer world is just a reflection of our inner world. So when we start to change our inner world, that's when we can start to see a change in the outer world. I started doing that, and just life started happening for me in a really beautiful ways. I start to feel like I'm co-creating with life and the world around me. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I met a guy, probably it's 20 years ago now, and he owned a publishing company, a book publishing company at the time, and he basically said the same thing you said. He said, he said a lot of stuff. He said I can't really explain it. He said I was just I met the right people at the right time, and we had a good vibe, and they just created a lot of stuff together. And the people that he didn't have a good vibe with, he just went in separate ways, When he said that, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I'm kind of like that, but I just never thought about it like that. It's kind of like when you first meet somebody for the first time, and you be like, it felt like I've known that person forever. And then you have some people you meet, it's a totally bad vibe.
Yes. And we have to be careful with people, because with energy, like, people are either a faucet or a drain. Are they someone who's willing to pour into you, or do you feel like your energy is just zapped every time that you're around them? So choose wisely. That's why they say you are like the 5 people you spend the most time around. There's so much truth to that. And one of my friends shared with me, I've done so much. I've been a nurse since I was 19, and on Halloween this year, I'll be 55. So I just retired in September from my nursing career 3 years ago and went full-time in coaching. I've been coaching part-time and working part-time for a while. And my friend says, I think because like all the lives you saved, and how I've done a lot of volunteer work as a nurse in Haiti and Vietnam and Mexico.
Okay.
She goes, I think a lot of the things that you've done for humanity, I think that's also why like these really amazing experiences happen for you too. I was like, yeah, that's true. We've got to put in our good karma points in. Yeah. We got to make those deposits if we want to make those withdrawals, right? So what kind of energy are we giving in the world? Because that's the kind of energy we're going to be receiving.
Yeah. I remember like as a kid, there was a lady that was married and her husband left. Right? Like, I don't want to be with you no more. So he left for like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years. And this lady got sick. She had high blood pressure, and she was a diabetic. And she was in and out the hospital all the time or whatever. And I'm a kid looking at this. I'm like, 10 years old at the time. And when the guy came back, I don't know what they talked about, how they decided to come back together. When the guy came back, the lady wasn't sick no more. I said, what the heck is going on?
Stress.
And then I asked my mom, hey, how the hell can this lady be sick like that for 3 years? And when the husband comes back, it's like she's brand new. She got a different attitude. And now when I'm young, I didn't really understand what was going on until I got older. And I started having my own relationships with women. And I realized when I'm around them, they're like different. It's a different energy, different vibe or whatever. And then I left and I moved to Atlanta for like 10, 11 years. And, of course, I don't see them very often. But when I would come back and visit, it was, the energy was kind of off. I'm like, and that's when I realized, what the heck, who were they hanging around?
Yes, it's so important, the company that we keep. And then another thing is, stress creates a lot of disease in our bodies. Stress creates illness. Cancer is literally something eating away at us.
Oh, yeah.
And stress creates high blood pressure. All kinds of illnesses are created from stress.
Yeah.
And whenever you have orgasms, you can lower your cortisol level. Whenever you allow yourself to cry, tears are a beautiful way of releasing cortisol and stress hormones. But if we don't allow ourselves to do these things to get rid of that frustrating energy, then it shows up in physical symptoms in our body. And there's a really amazing book that I love to share with my clients, and I have it right here. And it's written by a chiropractor, and it's called The Secret Language of Your Body by Ina Segal.
Oh, okay.
And you can look at any symptom you're having in your body, and it will tell you like the emotions that are happening and like what person in your family, maybe it's something with your mother, your father, something like that is happening, and how the symptoms are showing up in your body. Because our body is trying to talk to us and communicate with us and say, something needs attention here, but we ignore it, or we take a pill or a pharmaceutical to cover it.
Yeah.
Right. But we don't get down to the root cause. And this really helps you. Like emotional release and emotional release writing practices are really great to let go of anger, fear, stress, and guilt. And for, you know, even for males, but for males and females, doing something where you do a primal yell, or even going to those places where they have like rage rooms or anger rooms where you can go smash shit up is really good for you.
Yeah.
Because there's so much frustration we're holding in because we're trying to pretend everything's okay. I'm okay. Everything's fine. Fine is, you know, what is it? Feelings inside not expressed. You know, we're just holding it all in. And then we wonder why people break or cave or have a breakdown, because we're just trying to hold too much, and we're not meant to live like this.
No. So how did you have the confidence to say that, hey, you know, I can teach people this, I can do this, you know, I can start a business or with this? Because it's one thing to know what you know, you learn from people, you know, along the way or whatever, but starting a business and working with a lot of people, that's different. That takes a lot of courage, a lot of confidence, you know. So how did you know you could do it?
Well, the lever that I had when I had my first soulgasm, and what's interesting is that it happened when I was in LA, and a decade to the date of my first soulgasm, LA Weekly ran an article on me about the work that I do in the world. I was like, they just decided to run the article early. I was like, oh, that's awesome. So he had been, you know, he used to be a pro football player. He had been with a lot of women. He had been with, you know, sex coaches, some different sex coaches. Well, he's been with a lot of women. He's been in People magazine issue for Sexiest Man Alive. He's a good looking dude in LA. And so been with a lot of women. And at first I didn't have the confidence. And he would tell me, he was like, you know what, you know sex better than anyone I've ever been with. I've never been with anyone that ever understands sex the way you do. You're like, these other people that I've been with that are professionals that are making like a ton of money doing this and big businesses. He was like, they don't even understand sex to the way that you understand sex.
Yeah.
You should definitely be doing this. And at the time I resisted. I was like, I'm a single mom, even though my daughters were in their 20s. I was like still helping them because living in California is not cheap. It's like, I'm a single mom. I just came up with a bunch of excuses for it, you know? And then finally I realized, you know, this has always been my calling to do this. It's always been on my heart. It's always been a topic I'm very comfortable talking about. And so I decided, you know what, I am going to do it, because all my friends are always coming to me for advice before I even studied tantra. They're like, oh my gosh, that sex position you taught me saved my marriage, you know, etc. And so I just, you know, I realized that when I had that experience, even with him, it really broke my heart, because I knew so many women have never experienced that in their lifetime, and they probably never will. And it broke my heart. And men don't understand how powerful they are. You know, I literally had like sexual healing with being with this lover who, you know, was endowed with a conscious cock. Like, he was aware, he was tapped in, he was aware of what was going on in the world around him. He wasn't, you know, having his blinders on, right? He was very conscious and elevated, and he still does really amazing work in the world. And, you know, it's like, having that opportunity to be with someone where I could have prolonged states of ecstatic pleasure and bliss really did something for me. And being with someone that could be fully present, because it's different. Like, a man can pop a Viagra or do something like that and last a while. But if they're in their daydream mind or thinking about a porn or the list of things that they're doing, and they're not fully present and connected with the woman, like, women are very intuitive. We can feel that, you know, and we don't want that. So he was able to drop in. It was like honoring me as the goddess, and he was just like welcoming all of my orgasms. And he didn't tell me he had the skill set, but I noticed, I was like, wow, he's unshakable. Like, even when I'm orgasming, I'm having all this pleasure, I'm not phasing him. So I was like, wow, I get to really play, because sometimes I've been with lovers before and I would have to rein my pleasure in because I knew if I went all out with it, it would be game over. They would finish too fast.
Yeah.
So I was pacing myself. Well, with this person, I didn't have to pace myself. I was like, wow, he can handle all this. And so it allowed me to even go places I never was able to allow myself to go before. And with the time that passed, it felt like maybe an hour max, because time flies when you're having fun, but it was an hour. And I mean, it was like 5 hours of like prolonged states of bliss. I get choked up just talking about it. So then the next morning when I was with him the first time, he says, I had errands to run. He was like, hey, do you want to come back here tonight? And I was like, what a question. I'm here for it. And so I came back again. And at the end, I just sat up in the bed after another 5 hours because I didn't know if that was a fluke. He started to tell me he had studied tantra and mastered this. And I sat up and I said, oh my gosh, I just want to clone you and give one of you to all my friends. Because I was like, I don't even know how. I always tell my friends what's up. But I was like, I don't even know how to begin to explain this to them.
Yeah. You can't really explain it. They have to experience it. But unfortunately, most will not.
That's sad.
Yeah, it really is.
Porn is dumbing us down and it's keeping us disconnected. And I just did a post today about, we say we want so much in our society, we're okay with having superficial or casual sex. And it's like skin to skin. And even though we can be naked in bed with someone, we're not comfortable making eye contact with them. Because in Tantra practices eye gazing and it's intimacy you see. And I've always been really great with eye contact, but a lot of people, they're just like, oh my gosh, no. You can see me naked. We could have just done the most outrageous sex positions, but we are holding up because, again, the eyes are the windows to our souls. So we always want to hold up this illusion, this mask, or be in control. And for me, when I was before Tantra and I was acting like Samantha in Sex and the City, I was not going to catch feelings. I was I was in my masculine energy, and then I felt my vulnerability would be weak, my feminine energy be weak, but those are my superpowers now. But at the time, I was really guarded, and I was, again, not going to catch feelings for anyone. And then I think about it, and I've been going, especially through this program, become a master coach, going more into emotions. I'm just like, oh, our biology-wise, we're releasing bonding hormones, oxytocin, love and bonding hormones are being released. So that's just part of our biology. And if I'm not feeling emotion and I'm able to stay cut off or detached, I'm like disassociating from that. It doesn't mean it's not happening. It means I'm disconnecting from it.
Yeah.
And I'm telling myself another story. I'm lying to myself. So if we want to have a soulmate relationship, knowing how to make love to our lovers' souls, that's how you make a soulmate connection. That's literally soul mating. But we don't know how to do that. We're learning from porn and it's dumbing us down, and we're just having superficial, shallow sex. And then we wonder why our relationships are superficial and shallow and don't have depth. We don't know how to go deep if we haven't learned these or mastered these things.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned through trial and error, really. Mm-hmm. Just meeting a lot of women that if there's no emotions there, it's gonna be easy for a woman to just say, hey, I'm out of here. Because it's like there's nothing really invested there. It's not much there. Y'all might have had, a couple fun nights or whatever, but if you can't break through to her mentally, physically, spiritually, that relationship, it's not going to last long term. That's just and plus, there's so much going on, today and in people's day to day or week to week, activities they got going on, the jobs, the kids if they got them, the friends, the parents. So you have to break through all of that, before and then hopefully you have an opportunity to meet the real person. But I think relationships is it's very difficult getting to know people today, you know?
Yeah, it is very difficult because we're more guarded. And then the other part of that too is with relationships, you know, for men, it's so much you're taught or conditioned not to, you know, big boys don't cry. So you're taught to not show your or express your emotions. And so then that makes it challenging because then you're having a relationship and it's like your partner's like, I want you to share your emotions with me. I don't want you to just hold everything in. I want you to keep it real, you know, but if you're not able to do that and you're uncomfortable with that, how do you begin that now? And so if we're going to be like, as a woman, if I'm going to be with someone and the guy is disconnected and not able to have a deeper connection or have intimacy or really share their heart and their soul with me, I mean, I might as well just be using a toy because then I don't have the stress or the risk or anything. Because like you've got to bring something that those objects aren't going to be able to bring us, you know, that intimacy or connection. If it's just only a physical act and all you're doing is just, you know, wham bam and that's it. Like I think women, we're really there's a higher percentage of women doing their work to heal from stuff and working through things than males. I work with amazing men that are doing the work too, and I know a lot of men that aren't. But statistically, so now there's like 70, as women are raising the bar of what they expect, there's like there was a study recently published about how males are are lonelier and lonelier because women are just not entertaining this casual stuff. Like if you really aren't going to bring it, or if you're just playing games, we're getting tired of that. And so you need to show up in a different way, or you're just going to be an island to yourself because people are going to get tired of that.
Yeah. And a lot of people talk about how, you know, if they are having sex, they say, oh, I'm bored or whatever. I said, well, because you're doing it like everybody else is doing it.
Right. Facts.
You know, if you're doing it like everybody else is doing it, yeah, of course you're going to get tired, you know, because y'all don't really have, maybe y'all had a connection, but somehow it got lost along the way. You know, maybe y'all had kids and, you know, you stopped spending time together. You really stopped doing things together. I don't know, you know, but, you know, it's just, I think a lot of people have this too much going on, and then they never really dealt with what happened to them in the past.
That's a big part.
You know, so who do you usually, I guess, who's your ideal clients?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. I get in trouble for this one all the time because I've been told a lot, like you should just only work with women and only coach women. But I'm just like, well, if I don't work with the men, I mean, if it wasn't for a man, I wouldn't have had my awakening. I'm not going to leave the men behind. So I like to, you know, I'm here in support of both. And so I love working with men that are like into peak performance, even entrepreneurs. If you're familiar with the book by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, chapter 11 is dedicated to sexual mastery, to the mystery of sex and sexual transmutation. And that's what Tantra teaches you, how to transmute that energy or life force energy to reach your goals and to really be in your full power and be more successful. So I really love supporting men in that. One of my male clients is like, he says, I always make more money whenever I'm working with you, because of our ability to receive. Also in the bedroom is our ability to receive outside in the world, where that's money or whatever. And also how we show up in the bedroom is how we show up in the boardroom, is how we show up in the Zoom room. It's like this energy of how we're moving in the world. And then I love working with women too. I work with couples sometimes, but sometimes one of the couples is resistant to doing the work, or is it ready? But it's really beautiful. Even if I've worked with just the husband or just the wife, then the whole relationship is benefiting, because relationships are just mirroring back the relationship we have with ourselves. So I have a lot of fun working with people that are in relationship and seeing how that relationship can improve just by starting to improve the relationship that person has with themselves, see what intimacy blocks they have, what shame they're having, or how they might be disconnected, so they can have a deeper connection with their lover. And then women that have challenges having orgasms with penetrative sex, or they're ready to be multi-orgasmic. So what pleasure blocks do they have? What intimacy blocks do they have? And one of the things is, I have a client that he was 60 and taking Viagra, and wasn't able, even with Viagra, he couldn't have sex with his wife of 30 years. And so I worked with him over a period of time, and within a few weeks, their sex life started improving. But after about 6 months of working together, he said, on Monday before work, I had sex with my wife for an hour. She had 6 to 8 orgasms. And he was like, and then I was ready to go again the next day. My wife is joking me that now she needs to work with you so she can keep up with me. And he goes, I feel so much power in my penis. I wish I discovered this 15 years ago. I was like, that's what's up. And that's with no medication. So he's like, we're having better sex in our 60s than when we were in our 30s. Which I love that. I get messages from him all the time. Like, oh, my wife is blissed out. And I also helped him. He sent me a text, and he was like, you help heal a generational trauma, because he thought his mom had never loved him. And when she died, about a few months before we started working together, he had never been able to cry or mourn the loss of her. And during one of my coaching sessions, he realized she did love him. And through the next one, I guided him on some root chakra and healing stuff that works with your family as well. And he was able to cry for the first time and mourn the loss of her. And then he says, I became a new person to myself, a new partner to my wife. My anger issues have all but dissipated. And when we started working together, he was working in a hospital in the midst, working with all the death and dying when the COVID hit. And even in that chaos of everything happening around him, he's like, his emotions, his anger was dissipating, and he just started responding to life in a different way. And so I love supporting people like that. So there's just so much more your body can experience the more educated, and we get dumbed down when we watch porn. It's really limiting what you're capable of. Yeah,
Yeah, porn is probably the most delusional entertainment
it definitely
on the planet. You can't, if you just look, anybody that knows just a little bit, if you look at any porn, you be like, you can't, the average person cannot do what they're doing. And even if they can do it, they're not gonna last very long.
Yeah.
It's like, I say you realize that they're doing clips. They're doing clips of this. This is not like one video straight through. No, they're taking breaks, they're doing clips.
Yeah.
But let me tell you what I didn't know. I didn't know a lot of guys were having ED problems, popping pills and at the gas station. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? I didn't know guys they having problems getting up. I'm like, what in the world is going on?
It's the porn. It's doing that. Because now they're saying, there's a book that I read called Your Brain on Porn. Because I've been open about porn. I'm not like judgmental about things like that. And then when I started looking at the science, how it's impacting men, I was like, whoa. So just think back in the day, if a young man is going to be, when he's masturbating and exploring himself, he may find, maybe if he's like, he finds a Playboy or maybe a catalog with a women's lingerie, and he's just looking at a still image, right?
Yeah.
Just this one still image and self-pleasuring. Now, younger and younger males are starting out with being able to have access through phones and through stuff, watching these sexual videos. So they're already conditioning themselves, because our brain is our largest sex organ. So they're training their brain and they're training themselves to need all of this excessive stimulation to stay aroused. So then they're getting this, this rapid stream of images of the money shot, and it's like pussy tits ass, all within so many images within just a few minutes and seconds. So then you go to be with a lover, and your anatomy is like, hey man, where's all the visuals? And when you're with someone, and especially you're making eye contact or whatever, you're not going to be able to see all of the genitalia to keep your interest, but your brain has become dependent upon it. And then that creates challenges. I actually had an ex that before we started dating, he was having challenges, and he was taking like horny goat weed or something. But whenever he was I went with him to one of his doctor appointments, and his liver enzymes and stuff were really elevated. And I was trying to figure out why, because he didn't drink that very much. I was just like, what's going on? And then I said, wait, but he was getting those pills like from the drugstore. And then it didn't even really need to take them with me, but it was like he was so used to taking them.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I think it's those pills. Stay off the pills for a few weeks and see if they'll retest your liver enzymes. And it was those pills.
Yeah.
So we have to be aware of what we're putting in our bodies. And then I was with him for several years and he never had a challenge with it. But it's just this thing. And we just grab something else to cover up that challenge. And then we're creating more damage in our body.
Yeah. So if people wanted to work with you, where would they go to?
Thanks for asking. Just yestantra.com is a great place to find me. Also, my social media is at yestantra and my YouTube. Those are my socials and you can find me there. And then if you want to inquire about working with me on yestantra.com and on my social medias, there's a link as well in my bios where you can request a complimentary discovery call with me. And I don't do coaching on the call. It's just to see if we're a good fit to work together and which of my programs would support you. But you just have to apply for it first and answer some questions. That way we can dive really deep on that call and make the best use of our time. And then at learn.yestantra.com, I have a lot of masterclass replays and online courses and things like that. I have a male stamina masterclass and things like that too. So there's lots of things where you can get started. And then whenever you're ready for that higher level of support, you know, I would love to support you because women on the planet need men that understand your own power, like unlock the power within you and realize that and stop limiting. Because really when you're trying to do what you're seeing in porn, you're limiting what you and your partner can experience. And it's really holding you back. Being a porn star is not something to aspire to. It's an illusion.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So there you have it. Like, share this episode. Tell me what you think, and all links will be found in the show notes. Until next time, we're out. Peace.